Welcome back to the podcast. My guests today are Christine Cunningham. She is a lifetime Alaskan, columnist for the Anchorage Daily News, is also written for Alaska Magazine, and Steve Meyer, a long-time Alaskan. You moved up to Alaska when you were, was that 14 or so, when you were a young teenager?
Yeah, it was in 1971,
Okay.
so about 50. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, you qualify as an Alaskan. Their
Yeah,
book,
yeah.
The Land We Share, A Love Affair Told in Hunting Stories, was released last year. And so we're going to talk about that maybe to start off with. So congratulations on the book. And can you tell me a little bit about the title? How did you come up with that? Was that an obvious choice? And what does it mean?
The question is that a love affair with the land, with the dogs, with each other? And it's really all encompassing. It's the life we've shared outdoors, like so many people in Alaska. It feels like a love affair in every sense. It's the personality and the cadence, and just a long time building something that just keeps growing. I think the more time you spend outdoors, the more you grow in special places.
Well, it's a love affair with Alaska too, just Alaska itself. And all the opportunities we have as Alaskans, all the public land that we have access to do the things we want to do out in the outdoors, whether you're a hunter or a fisherman or a hiker or whatever you do. Unlike any other place really in the world, Alaska is unique in that regard, that we have so much freedom to be able to wander these places and do what we do. It's just incredible.
Mm-hmm. I was talking with my Adventure Lit class yesterday about just the public land, and it was an introduction to build a fire and how you have the migration of people to California for the 1849 gold rush, and then migrating up to Alaska for the Klondike gold rush. And you can't do that in a lot of different areas. You're not just going out staking your claim. You're not building a cabin somewhere if you're in Europe. And I said, when you think about public lands, do you think of public lands in Europe? And the kid just had no clue whatsoever. So I said, well, I'm going to tell you then, you don't have that. This is very unique to the United States, and it's a great thing to cherish. I don't know if it was in one of Steve's chapters here. This quote kind of stuck out to me, and it kind of goes along with what we're talking about. You said, in the end, successful hunting is about building a holistic relationship with the country. That seems like that's a pretty encapsulating quote there. As you've hunted and all the time you've been up here, what have been some of the things that kind of create that richer, deep experience with the country?
Really, a lot of it is just time in the country. From the time I was a kid, I wandered the country whenever I could, constantly outside. I hated being inside. And that came with me to Alaska. But the thing I learned pretty quick in Alaska is, unlike what some people might think, there's not a moose around every corner, and there's not a sheep on every mountain. And so part of that for me was getting to know the country, getting out there, just being there, year round in these different places that I would go. And, it goes beyond just, well, here's the regulation and this is what you can do. It's more of a understanding what's going on everywhere that you are. So, okay, this year my area doesn't look so good. Maybe I'm not going to do this, that, or the other thing. So that's a big part of it for me. Mm-hmm. And it's continued to grow with the dog. These dogs have Winchester. I guess I should go back a little bit. I grew up with hunting dogs. We had Chesapeakes and Golden Retrievers and Labradors. But then for about 20 years in Alaska, I didn't have a lot of time for hunting, and I definitely didn't have time to be a good dog parent, a good sporting dog owner. So I didn't. And so then when Christine and I got together and she started thinking, a dog might be a good idea. Well, by that time, things in my professional life had settled down, and so we both got labs. Well, then Christine got drunk at a DU banquet that she was emceeing and bought this beautiful Beretta over under 28 gauge. And when she did that, I said, well, now that's all the excuse I need. You need a proper upland dog. And that's how Winchester came into our lives.
Perfect.
I mean, you can't have a 20 gauge over and under without a English setter. So,
Yeah.
but when he came into our life, it was a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
That dog had a prey drive, and the best we could do is try to keep up.
Mm-hmm. Is there a lot of, you don't typically hear a lot about hunting dogs in Alaska. That's definitely, a Midwest or down south sort of thing. So is there a pretty large community or a small community, or what is it like with the hunting dogs there?
I guess it's your perspective on it. There's a fair number of hunters in Alaska that have, retrievers or pointing dogs, and whether it's waterfowl hunting or grouse hunting or ptarmigan hunting, there's some pretty dedicated people doing that. But it's very different in the lower 48, particularly for the upland birds, because the country's so big. The populations are not what they used to be, and they never were, as good as some places in the States where people go out and hunt pheasants and sharp tails and grouse and all that. So, so it's more about the quality of what you're doing in Alaska. You spend all day climbing the mountain, so you hope you might find ptarmigan, and when you do, maybe there's only a couple, maybe there's 4 or 5. But it's when people think of Alaska and then experience the reality of it, it's really different. You know, and with the dog, yeah, I mean, with our setters are big running setters, so they'll be out half a mile ahead of us, but they can cover so much ground that it really makes you more successful just because they can cover so much ground. Mm-hmm. And when they point, then of course you have to go see what they got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess I should clarify. A lot of people in Alaska have dogs, and a lot of them have dogs that they bring with them on hunts. But as far as like a bona fide, legitimate hunting dog, that's what you guys have.
We do, but like you say, Alaskans have dogs. Alaska loves dogs. Everywhere we go, we see people with dogs. But the other side of that, even though there is a fair number of bird dog hunters, in all the years that we've been doing this, what Christine is maybe one time we've ran into another hunter hunting with a dog, or any hunter actually, because that's the beauty of Alaska. You can get out there, and all you got to do is just walk a little bit further than somebody else, and you're by yourself. So it's just, that part is so cool.
So you have big game hunted. What is it about hunting for like ptarmigan? Seem like ptarmigan and ducks were very prevalent in the book. How did you settle on that, or what about that experience is either like your favorite or just happened to be what you wrote mostly about?
Well, growing up, when I started hunting with my dad when I was 5 years old, and that was initially it was waterfowl hunting, and then it moved into upland bird hunting. So that's what I kept my teeth on, and I've always loved both of those things. In North Dakota, I couldn't hunt big game till I was 14, so all my hunting was small game and bird hunting. And then when we came to Alaska, then that changed because now I could hunt whatever I wanted to. So I was really into big game hunting for a long time. Plus, I had a family. I was a young guy. I didn't have a lot of money, so that was part of putting meat on the table too. And as I've gotten older and that isn't so much the case anymore. I just love being in the high country with the dogs. I mean, I love being in the high country no matter what. And I don't care if I'm hunting or not. I just love being there. But when you have the dogs with you, that it just enhances the experience so much. Sorry if you hear them barking.
No, they got to be a part of it. They're the main
They
characters.
Yeah.
So, Christine, how about you? How did this become such a big part of your life?
Well, going back to what you asked Steve about the relationship or the connections, I think that it's been a big learning experience for me. Like, even though I've been doing it now for almost 20 years, I'm still learning every time I go, and it's it's learning that when you're doing things outdoors, you're entering into a story that's been going on long before you got there, and how to read the sign of what happened here this morning, yesterday, what's going to be happening after I leave. And the more time you spend going year round, you start to pick up on and really feel like not an expert in the area, but like you have some stake in the area. This place that's home for animals and you're just visiting. You're more connected than that. You feel more obligated to it than that. And that's where that relationship aspect comes in. For the dogs, what's cool to me is, they're kind of caught up in this. We're in a civilized world. They're domesticated animals. We're indoors a lot together. They're family. And then you go out in the field and everybody gets to be wild and free. And watching them, they're following their nose, you're following them, and that connection, the way they're acting as a medium for you and bringing all these different gifts to what you're doing, it's pretty cool. So even though I love bird hunting and I love big game hunting, I love that as well, but it's not as me as bird hunting is, but I do love it for totally different reasons, and I'd love to do more of it.
So that ended up being what you wrote about a whole lot. So when you were deciding how to put the book together, or maybe first, whose idea was it to make a book and then write it together, and how you organized the chapters? Did you pick his chapters and then he chose yours, or the greatest hits, or how did that all come together?
Well, who decided that it should happen was Kevin Painter with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Okay.
He's the guy that contacted us and said, hey, why don't you guys do a book? And we thought about that a little bit. But Kevin, and then subsequent to that, Kevin contacted Alaska Geographic, who does most of the federal agencies, that sort of thing, like publishing books and that sort of thing. So he contacted Andy Hall with them, and they came up with this plan. And so that's how it started. They came to us and said, hey, let's do this. And from there, we spent about a year going through all the things that we had. We'd have stuff spread all over the floors, trying to figure out which is going to work. But we had like well over 200 pieces to choose from. More than that, like 250 or whatever. But so that was a process, and I didn't want to have any for Christine, because why would I? She didn't want any of mine either. But no, that's not true. No, we
wanted it to be about even.
Yeah, we did. We want and no. Okay, so the process of creating the book. When we got started, we thought, well, this is pretty easy. Most of the work's done, but that really wasn't true. There was a whole lot of effort put into organizing it. Luckily, they had an illustrator, Kathy Leftley, who also did most of the work with how the book looks. She did, I don't know all the terms they use for creating a book, but she did the fonts and all those sorts of things, the page spacing, and but she was also this illustrator, and she said, we talked to her, well, maybe you could illustrate some of this for us. He's like, yeah, maybe I could. I'm not that great. Well, she's great. She was awesome. And if you've seen the book, sketches are wonderful. And so we spent, when you open the book and you see the geese on the right in the inset, when you open the book, those geese, those two Canada geese flying, took like a month to decide what that was going to look like. We'd go back and forth on whether they should both be talking, whether they should both not be talking. And this was, but
Right.
that's how the book progresses. We'd look at everything and we, really, really looked it over and tried to make really good decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, including what paper. So it was a really interesting process for us, and really fortunate that happened.
When you were looking back at the stuff that you'd written, obviously there was probably stuff from a couple of computers ago. So did you have the clippings and have to retype everything, or did you go back to the computer and copy and paste, or how did you accumulate all that stuff?
We've always kept our stuff on jump drives. So all we had to do was open the file. And I say that it wasn't really quite that simple because I'm not as good
because he didn't do it.
Well, I did it. But I would sometimes forget, or I'd lose one of the jump drives. So I had several different jump drives.
I had a spreadsheet and figured out, how do I put this in order of maybe the seasons, and then the seasons of the dogs' lives, where I'm a new hunter learning. And to me, it was fascinating to put it together. And now when I read it, the columns read a little bit different to me in this sequence than if you were to read one of them. I think that they kind of build on each other.
I don't do spreadsheet, but fortunately, she knows how to do them, understands them. So that's really how it went.
When you're looking back at some of those pieces, I'm sure when I look back at some of my earlier stuff, I think, man, what was I even thinking? What was going on in my brain? Obviously, there's the improvement factor too. So was it fun to look back at some of those things, and you didn't necessarily use it for the book, but you thought, man, what was I thinking? Or this is a really good one that might not make the book. How was that trip to the archives?
A little bit of both.
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. It's interesting you mentioned the improvements. When we'd both written quite a bit for various publications before we started writing for the ADN. But once we did that really stepped up our game. We really started cleaning things up. And so that some of the early ADN pieces were like, what the hell was that? I mean, they weren't awful, but they not what we really appreciated anymore. So yeah, there was quite a bit of that. And it's cool to go back and look and say, because you're going down memory lane too. There's so much of it that's just nothing but good memories, and some of them not so good. But we like the book itself, the way it looks, the way the illustrations and all that. We kind of had thoughts along the lines of some of the old books, like stuff by Gene Hill and Robert Ruark and some of those guys. And that's part of where using the illustrations and doing that came from. I grew up reading all that stuff. Love it. So.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between that older type of writing that's less about stacking bodies and this and that, and more about the entire experience. And I think that's one of the things I like about the book is that it can never get old too. If it's just about whether or not you killed an animal or not, like how many different ways you say, then I killed the caribou, then I killed the bear, then I killed the whatever, it just can kind of get kind of old and stale. So one of the ways to keep things fresh is to be looking for those different angles, and based on what's going on in your life and in the world, you then have the break to the woods in that specific context. So it really can't get old. It's really impossible to write the same column again and again because those variables change.
They do. Yeah, and that's what we kind of hope for, that it will be something that goes on forever. Um, but it's interesting that you mentioned that about stacking bodies. We had a lot of people comment about the column with the ADN. Some pretty awful, you can imagine, because anti-hunting people and the like. But for the most part, it was all really good stuff. But one of the comments I would often get was, "Well, yeah, that was a great story, but you didn't say how many ducks you killed, or you didn't say how many birds you killed." Like, so yeah, I mean, I get that, but that's not what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best stories are nothing's taken, and I think that's the part that's maybe so important. We live in a world now that there's so many of us, we can't always take everything, and we just can't. So being able to be out there, fall in love with those animals, care about them, take care of them the best you can, that's just so valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting time now because it's so easy it's easy to market, but also kind of a necessity to market. If you don't really have some sort of online presence, then you're kind of at a disadvantage to market, whether you're a guide or whether you're a writer or this or that. So how have you kind of used social media and used some of the technology to make sure that you're marketing and doing that without it kind of undermining the experience? A lot of people talk about going out there and they're already thinking about the shots and the angles and taking the pictures, and so you're not really present because you're in social media brain. So how have you utilized it but not allowed it to ruin the experience?
You have to be hyper aware of how that can factor in. And there's been times where, especially when you're writing on a deadline, getting in your head, when really for me the best part of being out there is that I'm getting out of my thinking about why I'm out there.
Well, I think maybe a lot of people might think, well, you went so you could write something. Absolutely not. Neither one of us will do that. We go do what we do, and then, 2 months later, we're like, oh, that was a good story. Or maybe it was last week. But
one of my favorite stories, and it's in the book, it's a story about Winchester in the backyard. So this is not your epic Alaskan adventure. This is anybody's dog in the backyard. And I remember after I wrote it, I didn't really put a lot of thought into what it wasn't when I wrote it. I thought it was maybe saying you can enjoy the outdoors anywhere. It's your frame of mind that hunters are always hunting. It's a mode of attention. And that's definitely what Winchester epitomizes. I get this email from a reader, and she's a school teacher, and she's like, "Oh, I shared this with my class. It shows that you can write about nothing." Hero's journey arc or whatever, that it doesn't have to be, that you can still hit all these different writers, alliteration. You can still draw in a reader and interest them without having it be all the, I think that the things we think are great are often the least of what we can do as writers.
Yeah, if it ends up always being some epic story, that doesn't really reflect life. A lot of the times it's just ordinary, and just that it doesn't mean that it's bad, doesn't mean that it's boring. Just that basic contentment is why we go out there so much and why it's so nice. I read a study about obviously being out in nature is very, very beneficial. There's a lot of medicinal qualities to being outside. But the study said that even 20 minutes of seeing the outdoors, so if you are like driving on your way to work, just seeing that sort of wild can be beneficial. And I thought, well, yeah, it makes some sense. My commute in Ketchikan is about 17 minutes or 18 minutes long. It only varies. Like there's no traffic lights, so it's a super easy drive in the morning, and you get to look at mountains, and sometimes there's snow. A lot of times it's rainy, but you can see a sea lion, maybe a whale, stuff like that. Is just, yeah, maybe that's why I can endure all this stinking rain and gray down here.
Christine has kind of a story about that. She had a similar commute like what you're talking about when she was basically an office girl until she invited herself along duck hunting. She can tell you what happened.
Yeah, so every morning I would drive to work, and on my drive, I would drive by the Kenai River Flats, which are right there at the mouth of the Kenai River wetlands going out. And when you look out over it, I would sort of, if I were to look at something, it would be the silhouette of the mountains across the inlet. And really the ground, the flats themselves, in my mind, they were categorized as like, oh, that's a wasteland. You can't build on it. This is pre-hunting 20 years ago. I'm like, big mushy area. And then after so many years of hunting, I mean, that is sacred ground to me. There's so much life out there. It's so rich. And I look out on those flats now, and it's like, wow, I can't believe that I get to see this on my way to work.
Nothing has a totally different meaning. The first time I went up to the tundra on the North Slope, and there's nothing out there. But then as you start to like zoom in, you see so much more, whether it be deadheads or there's no real rhythm to the tussocks, so it's so hard to walk on because they're not all the same. Sometimes you can walk between, sometimes on top, and it's incredible.
It is.
I love that. There's no real rhythm to the tussocks.
That's a great line.
So how much has it changed down there? I don't mean to make it kind of sad or the turn, but I'm sure that in the time that you've been there, you've noticed an influx of people. I remember Ketchikan hasn't grown a whole lot because it was growing, and then the logging went out, the pulp mill went out, and so it's a little bit. The population's gone up a little bit since then. It recovered, but Kenai Peninsula is pretty hopping.
It is. It's either been developed or it's some of the places we can't hunt anymore, and there has been. It's interesting you mentioned that. There has been more people, but not a staggering number of people have moved to the peninsula. But we get, the summer fishing, of course, always brings people in. But it really was COVID that really changed things a lot, at least in terms of where we like to wander the mountains and stuff now. Before, when we rarely saw anybody, even pretty close to the road. Now we see people a lot, and so we do have to go a little bit further back to get away from it. And it's one of those. It's a double-edged sword. For me, I would just assume nobody was out there, but the other side of that is it's getting people out, getting them to know the country, and hopefully they're learning something about it that makes it valuable. And we're concerned about some of the areas where the influx is huge, and obviously the critters get kind of displaced from that. It's not just hunting that displaces animals. In fact, probably less so than that continuous presence of humans. But yeah, it was the Wild West when I came. It was literally. I mean, everybody. I live in North Kenai. That's where I started my life here. Most of us were carrying 44s on our hips or 40. I mean, it was, we weren't shooting people, but that's just how it was. If as kids, if we wanted to go hunting, we just get out on the road and somebody'd stop and pick us up. Didn't matter what we had rifles or whatever. Those days are gone.
Yeah, in some ways it's nice to advance past certain things, but some of those skills and some of those opportunities are really nice. Like you said, if you saw a couple of kids with rifles, they were out hunting. Good for them. They're getting outside. Whereas now, we know how valuable and how great all that stuff can be, but some of these kids that haven't been able to experience it, that either no one's taken them fishing or no one's taken them hunting, so they don't have that mentor, or it's just not as interesting as staying inside and doing the stereotypical social media gaming stuff. So it's pretty unfortunate for kids now because they don't know how much it's changed. You know, if they would just have the opportunity to go outside, then maybe it'd be a little happier.
Yeah. It's something we think about a lot. You know, and this whole what's it called, the R3 or 3Rs or something.
Yeah.
They're trying to recruit more hunters, you know. And I think that's fine, but taking a kid out for an afternoon isn't the same as really taking a kid and taking an interest in them and spending time with them. It's sad to me. Christine and I, we did that, and after a couple of times, it seemed like more like we were babysitting these kids. We'd take them for a while in the afternoon, and there was no connection, and so we just kind of stepped back from it. Now, if we'll take people, but I think that's the key for going forward, is not an abundance of hunters, but rather a reasonable group of responsible people that kind of have been brought into it like a lot of us were in old days, as they say.
Yeah, I think there's such a huge difference between going out there to kill an animal and hoping that experience makes someone want to be a hunter, a dues paying member of all the stuff. And if there's someone who happens to hunt, who's someone that you look up to, then you want something about their lifestyle. Then they can show you hunting, and it's different than, like you said, babysitting, where, are we going to catch it yet? Are we going to get it yet? And that's not what it's all about. And it's hard to explain that to someone who doesn't have the mindset of it's more than just the quarry or the end result. So yeah, I'm a little worried about that too. The mass recruitment just to get revenue for conservation is different than providing value to people's lives, who then they're more likely to share it with other people. Then they're more likely to share it with their own kids.
Absolutely. When I was a kid growing up, I didn't carry a gun for quite a while before, I got my own gun to carry, but it didn't matter. I just wanted to be there because the outdoors and the animals, and you have this, it's such a cool thing just to be able to go. Sometimes it's just sad that a lot of kids don't have that opportunity.
Yeah. Well, let's get back on a positive note here. What's next for the book tour? When's your next speaking engagements or travel? What are you doing with that?
Christine, get out your spreadsheet.
We're working with the team at Alaska Geo and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, trying to figure out dates for a lower 48 book tour. We've done the presentation a few times in Alaska, and it's great because people that were readers of the ADN, we could get to interact with them, or we've done a lot of stuff in our local area, which is fun. But going outside, I think that's going to be a real great opportunity to share with people visually what this looks like, what this means to us, and get to have that interaction and see if this book is as exciting for others as it is for us, because it really is. There's a lot of heart in this, and I'm proud of it for my part. I mean, I'm proud of the book, and I'm a small part of it.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to that. The kind of the mountain, in the west where we're looking at is Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, Idaho, places that have a lot of outdoor stuff, but we're working with a whole bunch of different groups that that kind of hosts these sort of things. So that in itself is going to be quite a job, just figuring out which one's going to work and which one won't. But it'll be fun. That part of the world, of course, I love that. At heart, I'm still riding a horse out on the plains. So.
Nice. So if someone did want to buy the book, where can they get one?
They're online with Alaska Geographic, but then also there's Alaska Geographic has retail stores in all the different refuges around the state. So I know they're stocked at a lot of those retail stores.
Yeah, there isn't a lot of, and we're still working on all this, but there's not a lot of regular bookstores carrying them. Like it's not on Amazon, that sort of thing. So, but the other thing, the people that got involved with this, it wasn't just U.S. Fish and Wildlife. It was also the Park Service and BLM. So the Park Service is also in conjunction with, they work with Alaska Geographic. So any of their facilities will also have. But the book's gone well everywhere we go. It's been really well received. So we're pretty committed to it. No matter what, we're gonna be there till the bitter end and try to do the best we can with it.
Well, that's the nice thing now that it's out. Like you didn't have to make. It's not like a box office where you know if you don't make a lot at the first weekend, it's it's out. You have time. It's going to be.
We're thinking maybe the next one will be some like a photo journal, but nothing's sealed in stone yet or chiseled in stone.
Well, anything else you'd like to cover here? Appreciate your time. It's been great to talk about the book. I'm glad we're able to reconnect here. But what do you have for a closer or closing thoughts?
Well, when we're doing this presentation, there's a couple of things I talk about at the end. Where it came from was Kevin Painter with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service said to me, "What do you think Alaska's public land legacy is?" And that's a great question. So I thought about it. Here's kind of the way I view it. In 1800, there was about 1 billion people in the world. 75% of the land was still undeveloped. North America, we had 5 billion passenger pigeons. We had well over 30 million bison. By 1914, the last passenger pigeon, Martha, in the Chicago Zoo died in captivity. By the 30s, we had 2.3 billion people, and about 66% of the land was still undeveloped. Time I came here in 1971, we're up to 3.7 billion people, and we're down to about 57% of the land undeveloped. And now here we are, the 2020s, there's 8 billion people. 35% of the land in the world remains undeveloped. So, that sort of thing, I get a little choked up about that because wild land is so important to me. So I was looking at some other stuff, and I came across a piece that was written about, where is the undeveloped land? Where is the wild land? And they named 5 places: Australia, Brazil, Russia, Canada, and the United States. And after the United States, in parentheses, they had Alaska, because that's really where the last remaining land is. And so for me, the Alaska legacy for public lands is, this is the last place we have to get it right. And we've done a pretty good job so far, and hopefully we'll keep doing that. And we really appreciate you having us on today, Jeff.
Great, Dad. That's great. That's perfect closer there. Thanks again. Really appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
Always great talking to you.